Hi, Jean. Thank you so much. We are so excited to be here this morning, and thank you for everyone who woke up early to join us for this kickoff session for Tuesday's programming. My name is Michelle Stark, and I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing for Red Sage Communications. We are a full-service marketing and communications agency specializing in economic development and community marketing. And like Jean, I'll just emphasize, we really encourage you guys to use the chat function while we're having the discussion today. We think this is going to be a lively panel. We have some great guests with unique perspectives. And so as we're going through the conversation, if something comes to mind that seems relevant, if you have a question that you'd like to just jot down somewhere for us to go back to later, please do use the chat feature as we go along. We are also going to be putting out a poll for everybody to kind of gauge where the broad audience is in terms of communication and marketing, what your biggest concerns are, and sort of, what has stood out to you in this crazy COVID-19 time that really needed to be addressed in a more serious way. So what I'm going to ask our producing team to do is put the poll out for everyone. That should be showing up shortly. And we'll get to the actual results of the poll a little bit later in the discussion. But know that the poll is coming up. When you see it on the screen, please make an effort to just choose whichever answer seems most appropriate, and then we'll pull those up a little later on as we facilitate the discussion. I do want to go ahead and introduce our amazing panelists. We are so lucky today to have Veronica Kroc. Veronica, if you could wave to everyone. Veronica is the president of the Ozark-Dale County Economic Development Corporation and Grow Southeast Alabama Regional Alliance. So excited to have Veronica with us. Kate MacArthur, she is the president and CEO of Ascension Parish Economic Development Corporation. Kate, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining us today. We also have Angela Hendricks. Angela is the vice president for the Savannah Economic Development Authority. Thank you so much, Angela. And Courtney Ross, last but not least, a familiar face to those in the Nashville area. Courtney, thank you for being here. Courtney is the Chief Economic Development Officer for the Nashville Chamber of Commerce. So thank you so much, Courtney. We are so excited to have all of these amazing panelists joining us today. So I want to start by just framing the discussion. As an agency working in economic development and community marketing, Red Sage has seen a very diverse group of needs in this time. When COVID-19 first hit, it was everyone in that crisis mode. How are we going to address the immediate concerns of our industry, of our, stakeholders? How do we keep these priorities moving? And now, as we like to say, because the theme of this entire conference is disruption, it's really about how do we take some of the lessons learned in this time and apply those going forward for the rest of 2020 and beyond. So there's a lot to learn, really excited to dive into that. We've seen as a company a lot of our broad livability, workforce recruitment, industrial campaigns, industrial recruitment. We had to make some adaptations in the platforms we're using and also in the messaging itself. How do we reach these people, these target audiences, with messaging that will really resonate in this current time? So I'd like to start by tossing it to the panelists. And Veronica, we'll go ahead and start with you. I want to focus on the challenges first. We'll get the hard stuff out of the way, but I'd love to have each of our panelists sort of go through and share one challenge or one or two challenges that have really stood out to them during this time in the communications and marketing space, and share sort of how they have addressed those or are still looking to address those. So Veronica, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Certainly there are a multitude of challenges, right? But for all of us, businesses definitely had to make changes overnight. Questions that we received had a wide range. For me, I got questions such as, how do I install a curb for curbside delivery? Whether a section of the parking lot could be roped off to allow for outdoor dining, and it went all the way to how do I determine if I'm considered essential? So it was certainly a challenge for our businesses. They immediately moved into survival mode and had to focus on the critical tasks and necessities to keep their doors open. Just staying on top of what they could and couldn't do, and how to operate within the parameters was obviously a big challenge. So we had to move very quickly. We all did. We all had to move very quickly to identify and fill in those gaps. We did all the standard things. We created a web page of resources. We notified the community of openings, and how each business was complying with requirements to ensure safety. We worked with our businesses individually to determine and address those needs. We did other things as well, like establishing a weekly conference call with legislators and other leaders from across the state to stay on top of those new developments. But still, there was more that we definitely felt like we needed to do.
Veronica, I know with some of your initiatives, you really did try to think outside the box, and the idea of creating a simple platform for businesses, merchants, vendors to be able to engage with their target audiences and their consumers more effectively really popped as something that you all could do as a regional alliance to help some of those smaller establishments that don't have the backing of, a major national chain behind them per se. Can you talk a little bit about that Shop Local initiative and the Shop Southeast Alabama website?
Absolutely, I'd love to. It wasn't enough for us to just provide information on the PPP and EIDL, or to share the latest information through a daily update. So we launched and what I'd like to think of as an attractive and easy to navigate merchants directory website that was branded regionally, but was widely distributed at the county level. You mentioned that we have a regional organization. It's an 11 county organization in Southeast Alabama. So we wanted to make sure that that people could not only discover new places within their county, or know which businesses were open, but also explore regionally as well. So that's something that this website allowed us to do. Allison, I don't know if the website is displayed yet, but if you would, go ahead and pull up the Shop Southeast Alabama website. So as I mentioned, we hope the website would encourage citizens to frequent their regular places, but also to try some new places during quarantine. I don't know about everyone else, but I was anxious to get out of the house and go for a drive. So it was great to still frequent my local places, but I also wanted to see what was available in the counties around me as well. So this website allows you to search within your county, but then to also look at what's available in the region. So visitors can limit their searches to the county, like I mentioned, or go to other counties as well to see what's offered there. It is a completely separate website. So it's Shop Southeast Alabama, shopsealabama.com. It's a completely separate website. But then once we got into it, all of the economic developers in the 11 county region decided that we would also like to incorporate it into our regular website, to integrate it within the site, within our quality of life pages, so that the website is also relevant post-COVID as well.
Thank you, Veronica. Yeah, and the great thing I love about it, full disclosure, Red Sage was a partner for Grow Southeast in this effort in developing this website. But what we love is it's an investment in the long game. It solves a problem short term in that it really aggregates all of that information for the local consumers across that county region, a multi-county region. But it's also something that I know many of our communities, even many of our participants right now listening in, have these Shop Local initiatives that they've been working on, for the last couple of years. So here's an example of a resource that solves an immediate need, but really also is a lasting investment that can have returns in all these other areas down the road. Kate,
Absolutely.
I'd send it over to you as well. Can you share some of your, challenges, your biggest challenge that you guys have overcome or are still working to overcome due to COVID?
Sure. Well, our biggest challenge is COVID, and I feel that most of us share these this common challenge of COVID and our response to that. So it's going to be ongoing, which is great because things that we've been doing are transitioning for the long term. And we've had, the same issues that Veronica mentioned. How do we support our small businesses when that isn't really the focus of our operations? We wanted to see how we could quantify the impact on our large industries and what that would mean for our local economy, and kind of quantifying that impact and what the long-term effect of that would be, because the way the economy is structured is that, the larger employers are going to directly impact the smaller ones over the long term. So we immediately changed operations to do that small business call center, have the website, the same things Veronica mentioned. And that's when we realized that, similar to Veronica, the need was there for digital marketing, that a lot of these small businesses can't survive with their doors shut if they don't have a digital platform. So we did a similar website just for our parish, and it was good because we were able to collaborate. Since we're the economic development agency, we were able to collaborate with the 2 local chambers of commerce and the tourism bureau, which was great to put it together. And so we were able to list who was open, who was doing curbside, if they were using a delivery platform, what that would be. So I think, by having these common solutions, that's something that everyone out there could look at, and not only from the shop local perspective, like you mentioned, but also we are no strangers to disasters here. So we're able to transition this website so if there was to be a hurricane or some other kind of disruption, that we would be able to revisit this site and go back through and upload the list and kind of go through what's open and then what resources exist. So it's a good way to be able to reach out for the changing financial resources and really be able to reach businesses, and sometimes the only way that's possible, which is over the internet. So I think we had a similar solution there, and we just continue to quantify the impact and evolve. So whatever resources come out, we'll be able to continue doing that. So I think that was probably our largest challenge as well.
All right. How about Angela Hendricks? What has your struggle been in this time?
So when March came, there were 2 immediate things that really put us in a kind of a challenge situation. The first one, we were about 6 to 8 weeks from launching our new website. And so that put us on a complete pause for a moment to say, okay, one, we knew we needed to provide COVID resources on our old website. And we also needed to be able to have that readily available when the new website launched. And I would say probably like 80% of our content was written at that point. And so it was taking a fresh overhaul of that to see, what do we need to do to tweak that? What do we need to do to make sure we're addressing what is happening? And think back in March, we didn't really know how long this was going to last. We thought this might be a 4-6 week period. And unfortunately it was not. So we had to, make that temporary adjustments, and have made adjustments to that, as ongoing. The other thing is we really faced a challenge is we do about 200 business retention and expansion visits in person a year. And so those obviously came to a complete halt when our companies really needed us the most. And so we have a lot of warehouse and distribution, manufacturing, those types of companies. The warehouse and distribution have actually seen an increase in work, and they needed to find employees. Unemployment was super low in March, right? And then we have a booming tourism, which is not our wheelhouse, but we have a booming tourism industry that all of a sudden had no employment. So we had to connect those 2 pieces. And we did that through a website with regional counties that posted job openings for the warehouse and distribution and the manufacturing and other industries that we serve. And we're able to connect some of our tourism industry and employees to that to provide some employment.
And Angela, I think that's such a great point about using digital platforms as a connector to get people connected to the right groups, and I think the more obvious thing that often comes up, certainly for us, we get, especially in this last stretch, a lot of requests for things like, virtual reality experiences or video-driven site selection experiences, or how can we create or adapt a website so that the virtual first experience is really front and center for that, site selection community. But I love what you just said about sometimes it's not just that needs a focus. There's also this idea of connecting, helping your industry and helping your businesses, helping them meet their needs, even if you're the organization to provide that digital platform. That's just I think that's really forward looking. Let's go to Courtney. Courtney, I want to make sure you have a chance to talk about your experiences up in Nashville. What would you say has been the biggest hurdle for you all?
Well, I think the joy of going last is I can just say ditto. We've experienced all of the things that have been said here, and I won't repeat it, but just know that I think we're all experiencing very similar challenges. Something a little bit unfortunately unique about Nashville with the whole pandemic that we're experiencing now is if you may remember that a week, really 10 days before really that March 13th, everything came to a halt for us. 10 days before March 2nd and 3rd, we were hit with a tornado, a very impactful, very destructive tornado that really impacted a lot of small businesses and big businesses as well. And so we were, really March 2nd and 3rd, we had started, immediately offering resource and assistance to the companies impacted by that. And then only 10 days later, truly a shutdown for our city. And so, and just for the region and in a region that is so dependent on tourism, as we've talked about through this whole conference, it's really impacted us tremendously. And so our challenge has been, really focused around what could we pivot as quickly as possible virtually. So like we've talked about here, we very quickly offered all of our programming virtually. We have a Good Neighbor campaign. If you look on our website, NashvilleChamber.com, you can see our Good Neighbor campaign that was really born out of the tornado assistance of really helping others, but it's transformed into, what businesses are open and how can we spotlight and how can you shop local and all the things that we've talked about here. And so it's been really impactful. Now we're doing spotlight videos of different small businesses that are opening back up or that have done something above and beyond. So we're really trying to do as much as we can virtually and pivoted all of that. So a lot of the things that we've mentioned here, we've also done and are continuing to do. We've also been really reliant on surveys, really understanding what people are experiencing, trying not to assume what businesses are going through and get real-time information. We've found, and I'm curious to know if a lot of you have found, that people sitting around at home have a lot more time to fill out surveys. And it's been really, our response rate has been well beyond what we're used to getting. And so that's been a positive, and it's really good information. We've also done a lot more small group virtual conversations about what can we do to help. And so just any way that we can find to connect with businesses, large and small, has been really impactful for us. We're also a nonprofit, and that's been a challenge from a budget perspective. We're dependent on memberships and investment, and clearly companies are struggling and they've had to hit pause on supporting us. And so we've had to pivot on our marketing expenses. And so that's been a challenge for us. Fortunately, we haven't needed to do mass quantities of printed materials. And I don't know if we'll ever go back to having printed materials after this, because virtual is so much more effective and so much more, affordable for us. And that's really what people need. And so we had already really moved towards that, but it really drove home, what we're able to do from a virtual perspective, and just have that electronic copy versus, hard copy that just get recycled at the end of the year. So, so I'd say budget and just support of small businesses and large businesses, and just ramping up BR&E has been really important and has helped address some of our challenges.
Thank you, Courtney. And, it's really interesting to think about, Courtney, Angela, Kate, and really, and Veronica, all of the panelists, how that investment in a community and showing that community connectedness and togetherness, when you think about workforce recruitment in the long game or livability, sort of showing the true heart of your community, even with industrial recruitment, right? The leaders who are looking at this community, they want to know what is the heart of your community? What are you all about? So one thing that we've really taken notice of at Red Sage, and we hope will have a lot of residual value, is all of the communities that have been very, forward looking in setting up these community type initiatives or in facilitating a solution for community connectedness. That really does speak to that larger sense of, we have strong leadership here, we have proactive leadership, and yes, there's a crisis, but we're going to get through it. And we are going to get through this together. So just something, food for thought. We found that to be really interesting, that as you're in the middle of all this crisis, you may not be thinking about that, but really, that could sort of be a great asset going forward, because people can see the true nature of your community and how you all work together to solve problems. I'd like to remind everybody, if you are, first of all, thank you everybody for joining us. We are having a few comments about the buffering and some of the choppiness of the video stream. I think they're going to work on that. So stay with us. We appreciate your patience, as we all work through this virtual platform. But I'd like to remind everyone as well, if you have any questions, anything for our panelists that as we go through this conversation, that we should address in the group, definitely would love to hear that. So just want to put out another reminder before we move into the next question as a group, for anybody to ask questions if you have them. So let's talk about solutions, because I don't know about you guys, but one thing I always love to take away from any kind of conference is actionable tips, right? Like, it's great to hear about what someone's done and what their challenges have been, but I love to hear about solutions. What are things that I can take with me, lessons learned that I may be able to apply in my own situation? So that's where I'd like to focus next as we go through for our panelists. If you can share maybe one or two solutions, success stories, tips that our audience can take back with them and implement in an actionable way, I think that would have a lot of value. So why don't we start with Veronica again?
Sure. Thank you, Michelle. I would say that one thing that was key for us in Southeast Alabama was working together as a region. It definitely helped us to understand the relevance of the organization. We're not a new organization, but we've morphed over the past few years and have evolved into something that we all feel is more beneficial for our communities. Particularly with the pandemic, it was critical that we all work together. We discussed, we came together as a group socially distanced, of course, started with Zoom, and then we found a venue big enough where we could all get together in a room and talk, but like I said, socially distanced. But it was really important for us to sit down and discuss the challenges and hear how our neighboring counties are helping to address those challenges. So I would certainly encourage, just like you said, getting tips and those sorts of things. Certainly reach out to your neighbors to see it's likely, of course, that they're suffering from the same challenge that you are, and there's a good chance that they have an innovative solution.
Veronica, was it difficult? One of the tensions that we've seen in the last 6 months, our clients as well, they're struggling a little bit because they want to move fast and they want to think fast and put things to action. But we all operate where there are often a lot of stakeholders, and sometimes people have different opinions about how to move forward or how to move quickly. Did you experience any of that, and how did you navigate through maybe conflicting opinions about how to get on the same page?
That's a great question. I mentioned that we're an 11 county regional organization. So 11 economic developers, as you might guess, we all have very strong personalities and strong opinions of how things should be done, how quickly things should be done, and what's the best way to go about doing it. I would say that probably our biggest struggle was determining which things to prioritize first. There were so many great solutions that we discussed. Certainly, the first and foremost for us was helping our small businesses. That business retention piece, of course. So, working with Red Sage and getting that website up and running was absolutely critical. So, although yes, it is difficult to prioritize and determine which things would come first, we could all easily agree that we needed to get something like the Shop Southeast Alabama website up very quickly.
Great. Thank you, Veronica. Angela, how about you? What successes or lessons learned can you pass on to the viewers?
I think for SEDA, not only did we want to take care of our community, we also wanted to continue to do what we do, is to market and sell our region, right? And we came up with kind of really two things that I think might be applicable to some other communities. The first thing is we did invest in ArcGIS story maps. And we partnered with our regional counties to create a story map that shows sites and potential sites, right? And so there are 11 or 12 sites on there. And what we did is we hosted virtual happy hours with site selectors and consultants. And we're able to send this story map to them. It's interactive. They can look back at it later down the road. They can explore the sites. There's drone footage. There's a flyer, those types of things. And I think that's been very well received. It's not the same PowerPoint that they're used to, a little bit different. And it's a good way to connect with those site selectors. The other thing that we did as an organization is that we are focused on the creative technologies industry, and we created an incentive basically to pay remote workers to move here, their moving expenses. So they can get up to $2,000 to move for moving expenses if they move within 60 miles of Savannah, downtown Savannah. And that has just gotten tremendous press for us. We've been in Forbes, Fox Business, Southern Living, gosh, a half a dozen, or more publications. And the attention that gave us was well worth it for us. And we've got about planning on giving 50 of those out in 2020. And probably have had 200 or 300 people inquire and start to apply for it. And that was really a outside the box kind of thinking, because now, as we know, the remote worker is everywhere, right? And they can be anywhere. Some businesses are saying they'll never even open their offices back up. So how can we attract those people to live in Savannah, which is a beautiful place to live, and to bring them here? And I think other communities can do that on a bigger or smaller scale than what we're doing here.
Mm-hmm. That's actually that's a great contribution. And I was pulling up the poll answers. I don't know if we can bring those up, producing team, if we can pull that up on the screen, but I think this is relevant to Angela's comment about site selection. Hopefully our viewers, you'll see those poll results pop up in just a moment, but I'll mention, as I'm bringing those up myself, site selection and site visits, far and away, 51% of the participants right now with us in the audience said that was the biggest challenge for them from a communications and marketing perspective. So, Angela, I think your perspective on those story maps, being able to provide those virtual assets, I think that will hopefully really resonate, and that's a great solution, and we've seen the same thing as well. Just how can we get incredibly creative with virtual digital experiences that are accessible anytime, where we can very easily push those out, on behalf of the partners. Kate, how about you? What's something you've sort of taken away from this experience or hope to apply going forward?
All right. Well, I think a lot of what we've been doing during this time is celebrating our successes. So there's been a lot of negative news every day. It's a difficult time for everyone. So anytime we can celebrate, we're taking that opportunity. And I think it helps internally with marketing, with the morale of your community, and then also externally just to provide that that vision of your community and your leadership strengths and your healthcare strengths and the marketability of a place to live. So early on, we were celebrating businesses that were able to pivot operations to supply hand sanitizer for free, or PPE, or donate to the food bank. And we had a lot of success. And as we're transitioning, we have a lot of virtual learners in the community. So we're thinking of ways that we can combine our big industries, mostly our chemical manufacturers, to provide some STEM curriculum. So they're working with the local school systems to actually create STEM learning that fits exactly with the curriculum that's being studied here. So I think that's a really great way to match your community with your businesses. So it helps BRE, it helps relationships, and it's a great marketing piece to get out externally as well. So we've been really trying to celebrate those successes and those wins and think of ways that we can continue to connect the community with the business and industry world, and how to marry those in the immediate term and then into the future. Other than that, the same kind of virtual site visits and things, we're trying to think of ways that we can do that better. So we have looked at the headset goggles, which have been popular over the last year or so, and how we could use those as fan tours or site tours or the drones. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. And we're also exploring how to do remote training, and kind of like Angela mentioning, we don't have incentives necessarily to attract people, but maybe we can do workforce attraction remotely. So we can show what a great place it is to live and what a great place it is to work to attract people, but doing these virtual videos. So we're doing a lot of work on a series of videos in different ways that we can get those out. So I think that it'll probably be more standard. I know that it's been shifting that way, but it'll probably be more standard to see how we can make people feel that they're on the ground when they're not here. There'll probably never be a substitute for actually being on the ground, but we're going to try and get as close as possible. So there'll be a lot of that in the site selection and in the workforce recruitment on our end.
That's great. Thank you so much, Kate. Courtney, how about you?
Yeah, so those are great. We're also focused on the attraction of workforce. So we entered March with 2.5 unemployment, and then got as high as 11% unemployment. And so, certainly making sure that that we retain the workforce when we do all recover, and then attract those that want to live here. So we launched something called the Live It campaign, which is something we've had and was already in the works in production. And so we were able to modify it for this in particular. And so we've just finished that, and that's live, and we've got a site as well. So again, just as people might be looking to relocate out of a really dense urban core, they'll have that information available to them if Nashville is a place where they might be interested in moving to, which is, of course, to everybody's advantage to have workforce living. So a few other things that I've already mentioned, the survey tool, I would just highly recommend. It's so easy and so quick, and people are very responsive right now. So just using that to your advantage, and just survey on what's going on. What are they reopening? Are they, what challenges are they experiencing? And that way you can truly gear your product or your services to those specific needs, versus, going down a rabbit hole of something you may not be useful to companies. So the survey tool, on the virtual front, I think we've all mentioned, just use it to your advantage. Invest in the right, whatever platform works best for you. Make sure it's, works well. We do a lot of practice before meetings. We've gotten a lot of the kinks out so we now look like, we've come a long way since March.
You know what you're doing now. Yeah. You're a pro.
We can find the unmute button every once in a while. And so we, invest in that. We've also done, kind of as a statewide team, virtual marketing visits. So site consultants are also available and are not traveling. And so they are willing to to talk to a few of us on virtual site visits. And so I think that's been really helpful and a lot of value add. And then finally, I would just say be bold. People are real forgiving right now, and everybody's giving each other a lot of grace, and both internally and externally. And so try something new. I think now's the time that you're going to be forgiven for mistakes, and you're going to be able to correct those mistakes. And so now's the time to be bold. And so that's what we're looking into. And then with our regional partners, I think Veronica might have mentioned that, it is so easy to pull a group together virtually. You don't need 2 weeks notice to make sure everybody can drive in and get together and order lunch and do all the things. We just, you can easily pull together a group to talk about something or to problem solve. And so we will always use these virtual meetings, I think, going forward, no matter what, our workplace looks like, because it's so easy and it's so affordable and just so effective and a good use of our time.
That's great, Courtney. Thank you so much. And I will say, that's been an interesting thing too, to see some groups maybe less conventionally cooperative. We've even seen EDAs, EDOs talking to their realty groups more. It's just very interesting how this time has taken us apart from one another, but also sort of forced some new connections maybe that weren't as robust before COVID came. So we do want to make sure we have time for Q&A. So as I'm looking at the clock, we have about 10 minutes left. So I'd like to just put one additional call out there. If anyone would like to submit a question, please go ahead and do that now. We do have a really good one, I think, from Greg Wright that I'd like to put to the panel. And he's asking, what feedback did you get from your local elected officials on the work that you were doing? So in other words, did they really see your organization as a critical component of the community's response? And what was that initial dialogue or feeling about the work you'd actually put in? And we'll just open it up, whoever wants to go first.
I can start. I think it's been actually a really positive experience, whereas we were really seen as, prior to COVID, as just economic development and driving jobs. But I think our elected officials have really realized that we offer so much more, and we're able to use our research capabilities for economic impact models and projections of when we might exit this current recession situation. And so it has been really positive because we're able to offer the resources that we've always had, but maybe were underutilized or they weren't as aware of what we had to offer. And so it has increased our partnership and increased the dialogue between elected officials and the mayor's office and a lot of different, and statewide as well, as to, the chamber might have that information. Well, we've always had that information, and now we're able to use it. And I think that's gonna set us up for the long haul of really being a continued trusted partner from the business community to the elected officials.
Great. Angela, how about?
Totally.
Oh, Veronica, go right ahead.
Sorry. I totally agree with Courtney. I think it really helped to prove relevance. In addition to what Courtney was saying, we were able to move very quickly and put some of these solutions in place. And some of them are things that we were already working on. Some of them are things that were already in place. But it helped our elected officials and our leaders to better understand what a typical behind the scenes organization is doing to help our communities. So it was definitely a very positive experience for us. We also had weekly conference calls with our elected officials, with representatives from SBA and all of our economic development organizations, the Department of Commerce, people from across the state. We had weekly conference calls with them just to stay on top of the latest developments, but that also helped to show some of the strategies that we were putting in place and some of the things that we were doing to try to make sure to help our businesses.
Angela, do you have anything to add as well?
Yeah, I'll add. So in November 2019, 4 or 5 new city council members were elected to our city council. So we had taken the time from November to that March period to really bring them up to speed and to educate them on what we do and how we do it. So we were very grateful that we had done that and not in March try to explain what we do, right? But what we did is we took our senior staff and divvied it up, and we are doing and making sure we touch base with them on a semi-regular basis, probably every 2 weeks, of here's where we are, here's what we're doing. Obviously, our president and CEO is working with our chairman of the county and the mayor, and then, I have a relationship with one of the city council members. So we're making sure, that we are communicating to them on a regular basis and answering their questions so that they in turn feel comfortable answering those questions. And of course, we're in the middle of an election for some of our Chatham County seats, and making sure that those candidates know as well what is going on as they're out there talking to the media and talking to people. So I think the biggest thing is, keeping a clear line of communication to them of what we're doing proactively to help Chatham County.
Great. Angela, thank you. And Kate, we have just minutes left, like 2 minutes left, but how have people responded in your community to what you all have put forward?
All right. Well, we're a little different. We are not investor based, so we are funded by our elected officials, both our county and our city. So we have a continuous line of communication with our elected officials that hasn't changed. It's increased during all this, but I think our role was more, they were able to field their questions from the citizens and the community and push them over to us. So we were able to act as the business holding wherewithal. So we had the call center, we had the information, we had the webinar information. So I think our role didn't change in all that, but it's just a different role. So we continue to have that relationship, which works really well for our community and the response and getting information out.
That's great. It's definitely an asset to have. Well, I want to thank you all of our amazing panelists. It went by so quickly, 45 minutes over like that. But I'd like to say, Veronica, Kate, Angela, Courtney, thank you so much for your participation on behalf of SEDC. We're so thrilled to have you represent your communities and share some of your insights into how communications and marketing has been disrupted during this crazy time. I would definitely, don't want to put anyone on the spot, but if anyone has any questions in the larger audience, ladies, if you're open to people reaching out to you individually, if you're willing to raise your hand as a show of yes, you can contact me. Awesome. Again, sorry to put you on the spot, but I know sometimes, people have individual circumstances and they may have heard something that really struck them and they'd love to just kind of offline that piece and talk in more depth. So thank you for being such great panelists, so open and willing to communicate with the audience. Again, my name is Michelle Stark and I'm with Red Sage Communications. And on behalf of SEDC, thank you everybody for tuning in for this first session of the morning for new marketing strategies for the COVID-19 business environment.